And without further ado, with the Polymesh white paper being released, we did figure that it would be a good time to cover the concept of dedicated security token blockchains and what the differences and potential pros and cons are with a dedicated blockchain versus one that was generally built for just any purpose that needs blockchain transactions. And so first, I think we need to review the landscape of the current solutions today, Herwig.
I think that's a great idea. Tell us, Kyle, how does it look like?
So today, each issued token has been adapted for either a public or private blockchain, but there's never been a blockchain that's actually purpose-built for security tokens. So we need to pick apart kind of what those three things mean. First, we have public blockchains, which are decentralized distributed ledger technologies such as Ethereum, Stellar, and Tezos, which seem to have the most adoption to date for issuing security tokens. We also have private blockchain distributed ledger solutions like Hyperledger, Corda, and many others. And these are private companies that are offering the same solutions on a distributed ledger without being reliant on that decentralized incentive mechanism to operate the blockchain. So essentially, when you have a public blockchain, it's all about the community validating all these transactions. Private blockchains are valuable because every transaction doesn't need to be public to everyone in the network, which is important when you have central banks and stuff that want to have maybe more permission than other users, which is a good transition into a permissioned blockchain. And so with any blockchain, whether it's public or private, you can add permissions that create specific roles and whitelists to limit access and certain activities on the blockchain. So all security token issuance companies do leverage permissioned blockchains because of the way securities are regulated for privacy and compliance reasons. The most popular example of a public permissioned blockchain is Ethereum, which sees issuance platforms of community members develop security token protocols like ERC 1400, 1404, or DSO by Securitize, as well as RToken by Harbor. Issuance platforms can leverage these protocols to upgrade the public Ethereum network to power their security token applications and mint security tokens compliant with the necessary regulations regarding accreditation or jurisdiction requirements and other things like that. Again, most issuance platforms today have developed security token protocols on these public permissioned blockchains like Ethereum, Tezos, Stellar, and others. Then we have some examples of private permissioned blockchains like IBM's Hyperledger Fabric or R3's Corda. The most popular example of an issuance platform building on top of one of these blockchains is one called Onera, which was created by Ami Ben David, who was previously involved with Spice VC as well as Securitize. And Onera describes itself as a digital securities network built on Hyperledger, providing all of the tools and pieces and ecosystem members to power a security token infrastructure on a private permissioned blockchain. All these examples are companies building on what are called general purpose blockchains because they were built for many different applications and they grow much faster, but they don't necessarily fit like a glove for security tokens.
Right. And so as a result, critics and blockchain investors have questioned whether these general purpose blockchain solutions, whether they're private or public, actually meet the standards of an enterprise-grade network that's needed to support a large-scale security token infrastructure. Specifically, those weaknesses can generally be summarized as issues with identity and compliance, concerns with decentralized solutions powering the technology, and issues with developing on smart contracts versus on-chain. Regarding the identity and compliance, many have questioned the approach of pseudonymous wallets, creating identity and ownership concerns that make it more difficult to meet those regulations, simply because it's harder to figure out who owns what wallet and have a full understanding potentially of the identity of everybody in the ecosystem. However, in a purpose-built blockchain, all the stakeholders would be verified before being able to join the ecosystem, removing these identity and governance-related issues. For the public permission solutions, concerns fall under the risk of relying on a decentralized solution to power and function those security token applications. For example, Ethereum could suffer from scaling issues, like when, CryptoKitties clogged up the network.
Oh
right?
gosh, what a disaster.
There could be network attacks because perhaps, the Ethereum is more valuable than the specific security token blockchain protocol, or it has different vulnerabilities that are not specific to the dedicated blockchain. And then finally, you also have governance conflicts, of course, from the community. If you are not in control of the governance, then you are suffering a potential risk from issues that stem from the community. An example could be that adoption for Ethereum goes towards supply chains and doesn't necessarily focus on security tokens, and as a result, has an impact on the ability to develop and scale security token applications.
Exactly.
But on a dedicated blockchain, Kyle, all those functions and activity is for the same purpose, to manage security tokens. And so in principle, this purpose-built blockchain can be architectured in a way to power itself, built exclusively on charging a fee on the functions needed to manage security tokens. Finally, we have the concerns regarding current smart contract solutions being a patchwork solution to what preferably should be or are on-chain activities. In order to validate identity, offer custodial solutions, document management, relay information, and perform many other activities, smart contracts provide automation for these functions on top of the Ethereum blockchain, but can be expensive and slow. With a dedicated blockchain, a lot of these functions can be designed to allow you to write onto the chain directly without needing a smart contract, because the blockchain was already designed to offer these functions, and therefore can also be more efficient than a custom, potentially complex set of smart contracts that could be coded in a variety of different ways.
However, the concept of a purpose-built blockchain for security tokens doesn't come without its own risks and weaknesses.
That's true.
It can be extremely expensive to build this whole thing from scratch. It also is untested from a security usage perspective, right? This is something that when we have Ethereum, it's been around now for a bunch of years. We've squashed a lot of the bugs.
Absolutely.
Haven't done that. And then finally, it does have a little bit of a chicken and egg adoption problem, where you need those people to be participating in the network, but you also need it to be adopted by issuers. And so you need to find the right kind of solutions and community to support this thing, while they won't join the platform until you have the right issuers who are already using other solutions. So it's kind of getting additional validators, users, issuers is a very, very challenging task.
That's right. We did a great episode covering the infrastructure of a security token ecosystem, and you'd have to go and fill in all those pieces to be able to support it, from custody to broker-dealers to transfer agents to issuance platforms to investment groups and funds and investors and the like. All need to be supported and brought on board now on a specifically dedicated platform that they also need to be educated on how it works and get familiar with it, and programmers have to understand how to build on top of it, etc. So absolutely another massive adoption problem, I think, for sure, as a challenge.
The one good thing is that there are some options to help blockchains communicate and at least be able to work together in some ways. So I think there may be ways that they can, again, try to patchwork that a little bit as a halfway point, as a compromise as we continue to build this out. But it'll be interesting to watch moving forward.
Yeah, and again, no purpose-built blockchains have come to market yet. So, in order to bring this vision to life, Polymath set out to build Polymesh, which, Polymesh itself it's built on the Parity substrate, which uses Rust and WebAssembly programming languages to give developers all the pieces they need to create their own custom blockchain. That way you don't have to rely on a general purpose solution, but you have all the different pieces to create your own architecture, your own network, to bring together a specific blockchain solution. In this case, Polymesh being for security token infrastructure. The Polymesh will be structured as a public permissioned blockchain powered by the PolyX protocol. To be clear for everyone listening here, this means that Polymesh is the same as Ethereum in the sense that they are both public blockchain technologies, but the difference is that Polymesh doesn't support permissionless apps. Polymesh does not rely on the same consensus mechanism at all, and Polymesh actually has a completely different governance structure in place. So we're not really going to cover too much detail of Polymesh blockchain today, but I do want to commend the Polymath team for being the first company to recognize and bring to market a truly purpose-built blockchain for security tokens. It does remain to be seen the true value compared to the general purpose counterpart, but hopefully today we've all now got a clearer picture as to why the value of purpose-built blockchains may be needed for the security token infrastructure.
Anyone listening, I would love to hear your comments on our breakdown here. Herwig and I have spent a lot of time researching this to try to make sure that everything that we detailed in this episode is correct, but there may be things that are continuing to learn ourselves and may continue to develop over time. So we'd love to get into some interesting conversations regarding some of these solutions and how they may change over time. You should reach out to us, leave comments, give us feedback, and if there's anything that we can address or can change, we'll certainly make notes of that for the future.
Kyle is super active on Twitter. Just hit him up. I'm super active on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
I want to say the same thing. I would love to hear your feedback, as well as just on the concept of purpose-built security token blockchains too. Do you think that they are more valuable than the general purpose counterpart? Is it more of a sort of similar patchwork solution? All of it remains to be seen. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But with that, that is the end of our show.
Security Token Show, episode 29. Hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to keeping this going for 2020. 29 episodes in. It's fantastic. Thanks to all the listeners. Give us some feedback. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening.